everyone, and welcome to the Fall 2025 offering of the ABCD-ReproNim course. My name is Angie Laird. I'm a professor of physics at Florida International University in Miami. I'm one of the lead organizers for the course, and together with my colleagues, we'll be working to provide you with instruction on how to conduct responsible and reproducible analyses of data from the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study. This is the first lecture of the ABCD-ReproNim course, and so we'll start by giving you today's learning objectives. My job in this lecture is to give you some background information about ABCD-ReproNim itself, and then I'll also be describing the objectives of the ABCD study and give you a bird's eye view of the overall study design for this ongoing project now in its 10th year. Finally, as part of the introductory lecture, I'll highlight how the safety and privacy of our ABCD families is always at the forefront of our attention and give examples of ABCD policies and procedures to ensure the protection of families of the participating youth. I want to start by enthusiastically welcoming you to the launch of the ABCD-ReproNim course. We're very excited to have the opportunity to give this course, and we're grateful to the National Institute of Drug Abuse for their support for making this course possible. ABCD-ReproNim aims to provide training for responsible and reproducible analyses of ABCD data, and will teach students how to analyze data using best practices endorsed by ReproNim. ABCD-ReproNim was originally funded in 2019. The course ran from 2020 through 2022, and all prior content has been made openly available on our website. Funding for the course has now been renewed, and we're excited to expand our course materials with updated information about the ABCD study, including new information about data protocols and releases. But let's back up a bit and make sure we're starting from the very beginning. First, what is the ABCD study? It's the largest long-term study of brain development and child health in the United States. I provided a link here to ABCD's website, and we'll definitely get into the details about the study itself later on in this presentation. And second, what is ReproNim? ReproNim is an NIH-funded center led by Dr. David Kennedy that's designed to help researchers find and share data, comprehensively describe their data and analysis workflows in a replicable fashion, manage their computational resource options so that your outcomes are more reproducible. I've also provided the link to ReproNim's website so you can hear about more about ReproNim from David in his lecture. So let's talk a little bit about the course itself and what we want to achieve. An increasing body of evidence points to some issues in reproducibility in biomedical or life sciences, and the fields of neuroimaging and developmental cognitive neuroscience are no exception. Our end goal is that we and the NIH would like to see students in this course conduct reproducible data analyses, and for those analyses to be written up, published, and ultimately become part of the rapidly growing scientific literature that makes use of ABCD data. So how can ReproNim help with that? Well, ReproNim has developed a curriculum that will give researchers information, tools, and practices to perform repeatable and efficient research, and a map of where to find the resources for deeper practical training. ReproNim tools and services are intended to support a wide range of users with varied backgrounds, from applied users with minimal experiences working with computational tools to those with extensive experience in programming and imaging technologies. Okay, so if the goal is collaborative data analyses culminating in publications, then why not just host an ABCD hackathon? And this is something, it's an excellent question, and it's one that we've thought very carefully about. Most educational programs around neuroimaging rely on intensive teaching over a very short period, and these typically range anywhere from 1 day to 2 weeks. But reproducible analytics, which is a topic that's not traditionally taught at university curriculum, requires absorbing a significant amount of diverse technology-oriented content. Hackathons and unconferences, they're increasingly well attended around neuroimaging and other conferences. But these events, by their design, often self-select individuals who are already knowledgeable in many of the areas spanning data science. And they're often not suited for training novice students who are just getting into these areas. And if you've ever attended a hackathon, this means that either a substantial proportion of time can be spent leveling the technical playing field, or it means that some people just simply get left out. So ABCD-ReproNim was created when we ask, isn't there a better way? One that's more inclusive and seeks to provide a stronger foundation for researchers from all backgrounds and levels of expertise. Okay, our solution was to borrow from modern active learning educational approaches and introduce a new form of inverted classroom for workshops and hackathons. Rather than simply gather everyone together for a collaborative hack week in which most people come with already planned project proposals and a set of technical skills to pull them off, we're going to back up and start the process several months in advance with a detailed educational program. So first, ABCD-ReproNim is going to include the use of inverted or flipped classroom practices. This takes activities traditionally associated with classroom time and homework and flips them. So on your own time, at a time convenient for you, ABCD-ReproNim students will watch online videos like this one and participate in online discussions. More about that later. Then second, we're going to draw on the use of learning projects as part of what is known as project-based learning, in which students show what they've learned during the week by completing assigned data exercises, during which hopefully you're going to be collaborating and working with each other, getting to know each other. And then finally, ABCD-ReproNim will culminate in a collaborative hackathon. This brings us back to what I said a few slides ago, is that our end goal is that we want students in the course to conduct responsible and reproducible data analyses, and for those analyses to be written up and published as part of the literature that makes use of ABCD data. So at the end of all of this, ABCD-ReproNim is going to hold a 4-day hackathon in January, during which students will apply the knowledge and skills that they've learned and apply them towards collaborative and reproducible analyses of ABCD data. By first participating in this semester-long online course, students will have the opportunity to benefit from an increased number of hours spent on training through instructor-based and assignment-based pedagogy compared to traditional hack weeks where we all just sort of come together and learn on the go. In this way, we expect to provide a better grounding for participants before the hackathon, which ideally then we can focus on innovating around ABCD data. Okay. That summarizes our overall course design, but what specifically do we want you to learn? We're aiming for 6 learning outcomes. First, from the perspective of ABCD, we want you to be able to compare different data types and resources in the ABCD dataset and demonstrate the ability to access and analyze ABCD data. Then from the ReproNim perspective, we want you to be able to describe best practices in reproducible neuroimaging and explain why they are important. We also want you to be able to compare ReproNim computational tools and services and demonstrate the ability to access and use open source software. Finally, in our minds, most importantly, we expect you will develop and participate in one or more collaborative team-based ABCD data projects. So that's our overall philosophy and why we've designed the course the way we have. Next, I want to introduce who our team is and who will be guiding your journey over the next several months. First, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Angie Laird. I'm from Florida International University, or FIU for short, and I'm one of the ABCD site PIs. I'm joined by my fabulous ReproNim colleagues. First up is David Kennedy, who leads the ReproNim Center, and he's from the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Next is Satra Ghosh from MIT. Rounding out the group is JB Poling, who's from McGill University in Montreal. Those are your 3 ReproNim guys. This is the original ABCD-ReproNim leadership team that has worked together since 2019. For the renewal of the course, we knew we needed to add some additional ABCD expertise. So this year we are welcoming Wes Thompson from LIBOR, Carlos Cardenas Iniguez from University of Southern California, and Maribel Gonzalez from Ohio State University. Together, we'll be providing you some of your weekly content, some of the weekly lectures, coordinating with the instructors for the rest of your weekly lectures, interacting with you during your online discussions, and working with you during the hackathon. All right. In addition to the leadership team, we've also onboarded an excellent team of 16 ABCD-ReproNim teaching fellows. These are the folks that are available to you to help you learn. They are your resources throughout the course, the online portion, and the hackathon. Please reach out to them if you have questions. They're also going to be hosting weekly office hours. Please show up to those, get to know them. They are an amazing group of scholars and they are here to help you. You can find them on Slack, more about that later, and you'll be able to note them in Slack. Their status as a fellow is going to be noted in their Slack profile, so you'll be able to see them in that way. Okay, now we're going to talk about the specific timeline so that you'll have a sense of how you're going to need to be organizing your time. We've structured ABCD-ReproNim as a 16-week online course. This is going to include video-based lectures that you watch asynchronously, as well as additional readings and data exercises based on the lecture content. Each week's lectures is going to be comprised of a pair of videos, one describing one aspect of the ABCD protocol or data, and the other describing ReproNim tools, resources, or methods. Now, with inclusivity in mind, we're striving to implement the overall course to be flexible and adaptable to the circumstances of your individual lives. We know you're busy. We are too. You're welcome to watch the videos according to the schedule that works best for you. Maybe some weeks you burn through several weeks of content. That's fine. Maybe some weeks you simply don't have time and you're not able to watch any videos. That's fine too. That's what asynchronous and flexible means. But the overall goal is to stay on track, as you see by the calendar here, and work through all of the content at some point from September through December. Then, in January 20th to 23rd, we will be hosting a Miami hackathon at Florida International University, where we will be inviting you to come work with us and apply the skills and the knowledge you've learned on collaborative data analysis projects centered around ABCD data. Eligibility for travel awards to attend the hackathon will be based on your completion of the data exercises. That's why it is going to be important for you to work through the course materials by December. So again, while it is flexible, we do want you to roughly stay on track so that you can be eligible to apply for travel funds to the hackathon. Okay, we're going to be using several different online platforms to provide everybody with course resources. First, everyone has access to the website, abcd-repronim.org. That's where we're going to post our weekly lecture videos, supplemental readings, and data exercises. Videos, readings, and exercises are now available for weeks 1 through 4. Additional content will be made available in the coming weeks and months. All of our videos are hosted on YouTube. So in addition to them being on the website, you can also just check out our YouTube channel. We will be using Slack to facilitate communication across the leadership team, fellows, and students throughout the course and the hackathon. If you want to talk to us, please use this QR code and sign up for our Slack workspace. In terms of ABCD data, the best place to start digging into the ABCD data set is the new 6.0 documentation page. It's amazing. It has a wealth of information about measures and variables with release-specific notes and known issues, as well as notes on responsible use of these data. But if you still have questions, we also have a public Q&A forum for you to post ABCD questions. This one reaches all members of the ABCD consortium, as opposed to the Slack workspace, which, it's open, but you do have to use that QR code to join. Whereas the forum, it's just posted. Anybody can click on the link and see our questions and answers. And so now I know my ABCD, this reaches members of the consortium. Those folks have deep and extensive knowledge of ABCD data and protocols. So please navigate to that, post your questions there. We will make sure that those get answered. And then finally, we will use GitHub for version controlled code. If you don't have a GitHub account, go ahead and sign up for one. I promise you, you will use one very soon in this course. Okay. So now that I've told you about the course, I want to shift gears a bit and talk to you more about the ABCD study itself. As part of the NIH program that provides support and funding to ABCD-ReproNim, NIH would like us to encourage students to thoughtfully consider the overall research objectives for the ABCD study when conceiving of their team-based projects. The first goal of the ABCD study is to describe individual developmental trajectories in terms of neural, cognitive, emotional, and academic functioning and influencing factors. The second goal is to develop national standards of healthy brain development. Third, ABCD seeks to investigate the roles and interactions of genes in the environment on development. Fourth, to examine how physical activity, sleep, screen time, sports injuries, including traumatic brain injuries, and other experiences affect development. Fifth, to determine and replicate factors that influence the onset, course, and severity of mental illnesses. Sixth, to characterize the relations between mental health and substance use. And finally, the seventh goal of the ABCD study is to specify how the use of different substances, for example, cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, affects developmental outcomes and how neural, cognitive, emotional, and environmental factors influence substance use risk, involvement, and progression. To accomplish these goals, the ABCD Research Consortium consists of 3 separate entities. First is the ABCD Coordinating Center, or CC, which is based at the University of California, San Diego, and is charged with coordinating the scientific and administrative activities of the ABCD study. The CC provides the organizational framework for the management, direction, and overall coordination of the National Multi-Site Consortium. The ABCD-CC is led by Dr. Sandy Brown and Terry Jernigan. Next is the ABCD Data Analysis, Informatics, and Resource Center, also based at UCSD. The DAIC is charged with the establishment of a harmonized MRI acquisition protocol, central capture, secure transfer, and storage of many different data types, the rigorous quality control and quantitative calibration procedures, centralized image processing, information extraction, statistical analysis tools across measures and modalities, and the public sharing of data and tools. And just so you're aware, the DARC was originally established as the Data Analysis Informatics Center, or DAIC. So you may see certain older publications and leftover terminology. Just so you know, DAIC, DARC, same thing. And then finally, ABCD includes 21 study sites who are responsible for participant recruitment, enrollment, and baseline data collection during the first 2 years of the study, now continue to be responsible for participant retention and data collection across the additional waves of this 10-year longitudinal study. The sites are geographically distributed across 4 major regions of the continental United States, including the Northeast, Midwest, South, and West, and are demographically and socioeconomically diverse. All right, in terms of the timeline, the ABCD study was funded in October 2015, and the first year was focused on planning and coordination across the CC, DAIRC, and study sites. The study officially launched and began inviting participants and their families in September 2016. Over the next 2 years, ABCD engaged in recruitment, enrollment, and baseline data collection. At this time, participants were 9 to 10 years old. The baseline visit was a long in-person visit indicated by the little building there that lasted 6 to 7 hours and included a neuroimaging session along with multiple other types of assessments from both the youth and their parents. Enrollment occurred on a rolling basis over those first 2 years, and once enrolled, participants would then participate in follow-up assessments. The follow-up assessments included mid-year phone calls, indicated by the little smartphone, at 3 to 6 months, an in-person visit 1 year after baseline without neuroimaging, followed by mid-year phone calls 3 to 6 months after the 1-year appointment. During this time, our participants were 10 to 11 years old. Enrollment ended in August 2018 with a total of 11,878 participants. And at that point, study sites fully transitioned from a focus on recruitment of participants to that of retention. Year 2 visits, excuse me, which again were a long 7-hour in-person visit that included a neuroimaging session, took place from September 2018 to August 2020. And year 4 data collection took place September 2020 through August 2022. During that time, participants were 13 to 14 years old and again included a neuroimaging session. I think it's important to note that in March 2020, all ABCD study in-person data collection was halted due to the COVID-19 global pandemic. Sites transitioned to virtual data collection and imaging visits were postponed. Throughout 2020 and 2021, there was a lot of variability in which sites resumed in-person data collection and when, and that did have an impact on the timing of data collection for this longitudinal study. Moving forward, this 2-year cycle of data collection has been repeated several times, including the long in-person visit followed by mid-year phone calls at 3 to 6 marks, shorter in-person visit without neuroimaging at the 1-year mark, second round of mid-year phone calls at 18 months. The 2-year cycle is on track to be repeated until 2027 when the ABCD participants are 19 to 20 years old, and that will result in a total of 6 neuroimaging time points. In this way, longitudinal data collection will span from pre/early adolescent ages of 9 to 10 years old to emerging adulthood ages of 19 to 20 years old, thus capturing that adolescent window of development. I will note as a final little point here that early planning has begun to follow this cohort into adulthood. More details on this phase of the study, which will be termed the adult ABCD or AABCD. Those details will be available sometime in 2026 and in 2027. Okay, in terms of the protocols themselves and the actual data that's going to be available, I encourage you to spend some time on the ABCD data documentation site to learn more about the various measures and variables that are going to be available for your analyses. In particular, you likely may want to look at the non-imaging protocols, which include both youth and parent-reported data and are organized by the domains of ABCD General, which includes general study and demographic variables, a domain called Friends, Family, and Community, and then genetics, linked external data, mental health, neurocognition, novel technologies, physical health, and substance use. We have organized many of our weekly lectures and course content specifically around these different domains of assessment. As one of our course outcomes is you being familiar with ABCD data, we think it's critically important that we spend quite a lot of time reviewing these different assessments, as these are the data that are going to be available to you for your hackathon analyses. Finally, a critical component of the ABCD study is its longitudinal nature. With ABCD 6.0 release, we finally have quite a few number of time points that are available, enabling longitudinal analyses, which is one reason why we brought Wes Thompson on for this phase of ABCD-ReproNim. We are hoping for a number of different longitudinal analyses to emerge during the hackathon. So consider that 2 years is a long time in a child's development. For example, that there are some questions that are more appropriate for 11 and 12-year-olds compared to 9 and 10-year-olds. And this was reflected in changes to ABCD's protocols. As youth aged, ABCD's protocols were and are continuing to be modified at different time points to capture newly relevant information for the time period that's being measured, for the age that's being measured. And this is perhaps very well exemplified for the substance use assessments that are being included as youth potentially begin to experiment with sips of alcohol at one age, and then for that to escalate, and at another age for those youth to then potentially begin engaging in underage binge drinking episodes. So I'll note that also there are additional sources of data that became available at different time points. For example, when transitioning from baseline to year 2 protocols, we added a Fitbit protocol to include mobile measures of sleep, health, and physical activity. So with the release of 6.0, data are available from the baseline time point all the way up to the year 6 follow-up time point. The data documentation page has a super useful feature for each domain that summarizes which measures were collected at each time point, but it can be a little bit hidden for the first time you're looking at this. So the video that's been playing demonstrates how to get there. Just go to the domain overview, and then in that overview, you can use the scroll technique to scroll over horizontally to the right to see a table that details what we refer to as the events of administration for each measure. The dot indicates at which time point each of the measures that you see there listed as rows, when those were captured. If you see the top row, the A's refer to the annual time points, the M refers to the mid-year. Only mental health and substance use are acquired at the mid-year. So for all of the other domains, imaging, neurocognition, family, friends, and community, those are all annual only. We're also going to be releasing some PDFs and screenshots of these time point tables, these events of administration, so that you can have these as static representations, because I find these, we got these last night, we're all very excited about them. I find these incredibly helpful in planning analyses. Okay, so for example, these are the screenshots and PDFs that we're going to be releasing. This is a domain summary for mental health. Events is the time point, including both annual and mid-year events. The dots indicate if a given measure was collected at that time point. And remember, critically, neuroimaging data are collected only on even-numbered years, so baseline year 2, year 4, year 6, and so on. And again, that's really important to remember when planning your analyses, if you're going to be including neuroimaging as part of your analysis plan. And then this is another one for neurocognition. And again, a note in contrast to the previous slide with mental health, neurocognition are only collected at the annual and not the mid-year events. So this table is a little bit simpler. Okay, so now for the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about the protection of human subjects in research. The ABCD study involves the children under the age of 18 years old, and this was justified by its focus on the study of neurodevelopment and behavioral maturation in childhood and adolescence. The age range of the children enrolled in the study at baseline was 9 to 10 years old. And this age corresponded to a period during which ongoing neurocognitive maturation is significant, while high-risk behaviors, psychiatric symptoms, and substance involvement are infrequent. And this design allows investigators to examine the degree to which these adverse outcomes are most strongly associated with negative influence in the environment or with pre-existing phenotypes, which was a major goal of the study. Now, the enrollment demography of ABCD was designed with consideration of the demographic composition of the sites and of the U.S. as a whole, and was based on guidance from the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research, who examined the population of 9 to 10-year-olds within the catchment areas of the ABCD data collection sites. And importantly, there was no gender or racial ethnic group that was excluded in the study. Now, I realize this is a very text-heavy portion of the presentation, but these are important details that we want to make sure that we cover in this first lecture. And so next up is informed consent. Interested youth or parents contacted the research sites in response to the school mailings by mail, by email, by phone, or by web entry. And the families contacted by study staff using contact information were provided by schools through twin registries or from mailing lists. Now, either by phone or in person, staff described the project in more detail and asked if the family remained interested if the parent or guardian was asked a set of screening questions to determine if the child was eligible. More details are going to be provided in the week 3 lecture regarding study eligibility criteria. If the youth remained eligible, the family was scheduled for an appointment. The parent guardian permission for child, adult, informed consent and youth assent forms were reviewed with the family at the first in-person assessment session. And importantly, during the informed permission and consent process, the parent or legal guardian or primary caregiver was told that they would not be informed about the child's substance use and that the youth self-report and lab data were going to be confidential, with the exception of any acute safety issues such as suicidality or a medical emergency. The assent and consent forms included baseline and 10 years of follow-up participation, and therefore assent and consent were obtained at student entry. But in addition, youth participants have been asked to reassent at age 13 with a more comprehensive adolescent assent, and then again at age 18, when parent and legal guardian permission was no longer needed, the youth are now being asked, some of them have already and some of them continue to be, are being asked to consent to all protocol elements for their own participation. In terms of school records, the parent was asked to sign an optional release of records to the school district by the youth. And in order to obtain school records starting at the grade level of the youth at student entry through the completion of high school or GED or the highest grade achieved, the records requested included attendance, classes taken, grades and grade point average, class rank, and standardized test scores. The PI in each youth case complies with the FERPA Act of 1974, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, to the end that the rights and privacy of the enrolled students and their parents were not violated or invaded. There was also a release to obtain a questionnaire from a parent's teacher. Parents were asked to sign a release to ask their child's teacher to fill out the brief problem monitor teacher form and send to the study site. The parent provided the teacher's name and the permission to send the questionnaire. If the teacher was willing, they spent about 8 to 10 minutes answering questions about the youth, and this was sent to the study team but not shared with the parent. And then finally, we use LexisNexis to gather residential history. This is a publicly available search tool that provides the ability to look at residential address history for an individual. This can be useful when attempting to contact hard-to-reach families, helps promote retention and prevent attrition. It can also be useful for geocoding to allow research questions that focuses on issues related to neighborhoods. And so we got verbal permission to gather this information from participating youth and their families. In terms of potential risks, there were deemed no serious risks involved with the study. The assessments involved in the protocol entailed no foreseeable risks besides perhaps fatigue, mild to moderate demands on attention and cognition, possibly feeling uncomfortable or anxious with the nature of some of the questions, such as pubertal staging or problems with behavior. but these were not seen as significant risks. One potential risk was a breach of confidentiality related to collection of sensitive information. Confidentiality issues can be significant, and this study collects a lot of sensitive data, particularly with respect to the risk of inadvertent disclosure of illicit substance use, genetic, mental, and physical health information. Since personal information is gathered, there also risks the possible invasion of privacy. But these risks and also protective measures have been put into place to manage them, and these have been outlined in the consent documents. Data from the study included genomic information, will be available and are being made available in controlled access data repositories for broad sharing. You will hear lots and lots and lots about that in our week 2 lecture. The fact that the data are being shared was noted very early on in the consent forms. And we will be hearing again a lot about that in the week 2, particularly the new data access platform, NBDC. Additional procedures are put in place to protect against inadvertent disclosure, coercion, and risk associated with MRI and functional MRI and the blood draw. And these have all been detailed in the Central IRB protocol managed by UC San Diego. There are procedures for ensuring professional intervention. If a participant should become uncomfortable with any of the procedures, they can stop or withdraw from the study at any time. There are procedures for intoxication if a use breathalyzer or for alcohol or saliva drug tested positive, suggesting intoxication. The youth are not studied that day. The parents are not informed of the positive results unless the intoxication is life-threatening. And there are procedures that are standard to, neuroimaging facilities for incidental findings on neuroimaging. Participants and their family are informed that this is a research study and not a clinical study, and therefore, their scans are not of the quality for diagnostic imaging. However, all scans are reviewed by central neuroradiologists, and there are standard procedures to review for incidental findings and central processes for participant notifications. So that covers it for the first ABCD-ReproNim lecture. If you're watching the video but haven't registered for the class, we ask that you please register as a student on our website. This helps us make sure you have access to all of the course materials, but it also helps us track the number of people that are engaging with the course material so that our efforts will continue to be funded by the NIH. If you have registered for the course, then we've already sent you an informational email. And so if you didn't receive an email from us, please check your junk or clutter folders. If you still can't find the email, then send us an email at info@abcd-repronim.org and we'll get all that sorted out for you. Remember to join our Slack workspace. Here's your QR code again. And with that said, we want to thank the National Institute of Drug Abuse for their support. The ABCD-ReproNim course is supported by an R25 award. Thank you for watching the video. We look forward to working with you and hope you find the course helpful. Thank you.